Hello there, Commonwealth from here. The Legend of Zelda has a presence like never before on the Nintendo Switch 2, all thanks to Nintendo Switch backwards compatibility, with free upgrades, paid Switch 2 editions or included in the expansion pack, plus also in the expansion pack the 3D Zelda games Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask for N64 and recently added for GameCube the Wind Waker. While Skyward Sword is playable for backwards compatibility and maybe also waiting for an upgrade. But there's still one 3D Zelda game that is not playable on Nintendo Switch 2 in any capacity, that being Twilight Princess, a game we haven't seen since March 2016 and which is still stuck as the only Zelda on the Wii U. So be sure to leave a like, subscribe and press the notification bell. Twilight Princess on the Nintendo Switch 2. There is a number of ways that this could be done by Nintendo. The easiest and also by far laziest would just be to use the GameCube version of the game, just like in the case of the Wind Waker, and call it a day. Put it on GameCube Switch Online, adding another reason to have the expansion pack along with the free upgrades of the Switch 2 editions for Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, but I have a feeling that this game would not translate as well as the Wind Waker. Number one is that the Wind Waker is a game that is famous for its timeless art style. Its cel-shaded look makes it age like fine wine. It gets more iconic for every passing year. There's no Zelda game that will ever age like this. Twilight Princess, on the other hand, is probably the Zelda game that ages the worst, mostly due to its most realistic art style, or attempt at it, as the game came as a result of the backlash of the cel-shaded look of the Wind Waker. It is a game that the Zelda team didn't really want to make, and definitely not the director at the time, Eiji Aonuma, who in many ways was forced by the backlash of the Wind Waker to, instead of making a sequel to the Wind Waker, go back and make more of a sequel to the Hero of Time, but set in a later time, sometime after Majora's Mask, the timeline where the Hero of Time was sent to at the end of Ocarina of Time. And that is the problem. It is the dark sheep of the franchise, not for us Western fans who absolutely went amok in 2004 and also loved it on the Wii in 2006 and obviously the Wii U version in 2016, but for the Zelda team, it is a game that is up there with Majora's Mask as one of the less pleasant experiences they've had developing the Legend of Zelda games. For them, it's probably best to just call it a day and let it go through GameCube Switch Online. But for the game itself, that is definitely not the way to go. Because as we will be entering 40th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda, we'll also be celebrating the 10th anniversary of Twilight Princess HD and the 20th anniversary of Twilight Princess. And yes, there's a much hotter candidate for the remake or the 40th anniversary game than just going for the 30th anniversary release once again. That being, of course, a 4K remake of The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, a game that is very similar to Twilight Princess, but which had a number of limitations that Twilight Princess didn't have. A good example of that is no dual analog camera controls, horseback combat that is just limited to archery, and unless these are added in, say, a 4K remake, as been rumored now for quite a while, Twilight Princess still has something to offer, including some of the best dungeons in the series. It has a very solid story with proper setbacks. It is a story that evolves with the player and which is in many ways a good template of what The Legend of Zelda should be, apart from a very much forced linearity, because this is the most linear 3D Zelda game along with Skyward Sword. So the question is, will this game, as a result, be the right fit for a Nintendo Switch 2? Personally, I can't think of a better game, especially with the Elden Ring coming to the Nintendo Switch 2 and with possible next-gen upgrades to The Witcher 3, probably the most impressive looking, at least when it comes to realistic art styles, Nintendo Switch port and game. I have a feeling that Twilight Princess could be Nintendo's answer here to demonstrate the power of the Nintendo Switch 2, because if you can pull a game in this art style, with this world, with this level of gameplay, as well when it comes to its combat and all the hidden skills, then you are talking about a game that could really stand out and be a very good fit for the 40th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda. But of course, we have Ocarina of Time 4K, which is probably a game that would be selling even more. It also builds up with the sales argument that Ocarina of Time has over Twilight Princess. It is the better selling Zelda, and Ocarina of Time 3D sold far better than Twilight Princess HD. Yes, you could say that the Wii U was completely dead in the early months of 2016, but that also makes it a great candidate since it's been a long time since we've seen this game. The problem for Twilight Princess though is that it originally was developed for the GameCube. It was revealed for the GameCube. Link was of course left-handed, unlike the mirrored version on the Wii, where of course the Wii U HD version on Wii U managed to find a solid compromise by of course having the original GameCube version being the regular mode and the Wii version, the mirrored one, being the hero mode. Because of this, the Wii U version is the superior ultimate version of Twilight Princess and would still continue to be if Nintendo decides to go the Wind Waker route and just throw Twilight Princess, the GameCube version of it, on GameCube Switch Online. But I really don't want to see that happen because of the fact that this art style, and especially the GameCube version, has not aged well. It is murky, it is way too dark at times, it doesn't have the nuances that were somewhat fixed with Twilight Princess HD, and it's very, very dated. What I hope Nintendo will do is that the original GameCube Wind Waker will be the only 3D Zelda game through GameCube Switch Online, and that Twilight Princess doesn't get that treatment because it's just going to be a worse experience. The Wind Waker makes a ton of sense having there. Twilight Princess had a remaster for a reason. It was dated in 2016. There is a solution, of course, and that is that we get Twilight Princess through GameCube Switch Online because Ocarina of Time 4K happening the same year. And Ocarina of Time 4K is not just a standalone thing, no, it's rather, say, a reboot of the tradition that we had on the 3DS, Wii U, and the Nintendo Switch, remaking and remastering the 3D Zelda games. That being, after Ocarina of Time 4K, continuing with Majora's Mask 4K, then finally getting to Wind Waker HD and taking what's from there and turning it into Wind Waker 4K before getting to the final Wii U remaster Zelda, that being Twilight Princess HD. Much later, like when we were looking at the next 10 years of The Legend of Zelda, it could be as late as 2036. It could be in that time range, since we could go 10 years from Twilight Princess being playable on GameCube Switch Online for Nintendo Switch 2. In that scenario, it could also be the only way to play Twilight Princess on the Nintendo Switch 2, which is why I am not the biggest fan of this solution, but I would understand why they would want to go chronologically through the 3D Zelda games before reaching Twilight Princess 4K. On one side, I do hope that the only missing 3D Zelda game will get a version that is at least equivalent to, say, Skyward Sword HD, which is playable obviously on the Nintendo Switch 2 for backwards compatibility. But on the other side, I don't want to wait too long for it. To be fair, I would be okay if it came out in 2026 and then have Ocarina of Time 4K for the 30th anniversary of Ocarina of Time. That is the best way, I think, of going forward with this franchise, or at least when it comes to the remakes, where you go with first Twilight Princess, then Ocarina of Time, then Majora's Mask, or maybe even Wind Waker before Majora's Mask, like we saw in the case of between Ocarina of Time, then Wind Waker, then Majora's Mask, and then of course Skyward Sword sometime later on the next system again after the Nintendo Switch 2. And being able to play all of it handheld as well, that would be another bonus that no other system before has been able to provide. And yeah, that is pretty much how Nintendo should be going forward with this project, realizing that Twilight Princess, just like Ocarina of Time 4K, is worthy of more than just being present through Nintendo Switch Online or the retro consoles available there. It needs a 4K remake, and it needs a final ultimate version that can leave it to rest once and for all, because I don't think Nintendo will go beyond 4K when it comes to the remakes and remasters of them. But what do you think of the only missing 3D Zelda game on the Nintendo Switch 2, namely Twilight Princess coming to the latest Nintendo system? And how would you like to see it happen? Sound off in the comment section down below. If you haven't already, then be sure to leave a like, subscribe and press the notification bell and for all notifications to not miss any upcoming Zelda and Nintendo Switch 2 videos. Last but not least, a big thanks to you and to all our patreon.com/commonrealm patrons, and in particular, Raw Producer, JC Funk, and Heroes, Cheryl, Garrett Hoy, Holly Wolf, and Kintaro. You all rock, and please enjoy one or both of these two awesome videos.